Guys, for today in our grammar section, we're gonna meet and get to know one of the craziest part of speech in our Russian language journey, the noun. I know it already sounds quite terrifying and a bit shitty, but keep calm, guys. Today we're not gonna learn all those really cases or a million rules that could make even my head blow up.
No, no, no!
For our first touch of Russian nouns, we're going to be gentle and we are focusing only on what nouns in Russian are in general and what features they have. And we will explore each of them in much more detail separately later, which is why today is just an introduction. Well, all the tears just later. And right from the start, here is my third piece of advice on this channel. I beg you, don't stress too much about Russian grammar. I know it's not the easiest grammar in the world, and maybe you want to do your absolute best, just like everyone else learning a foreign language. I know it, and that's amazing. But guys, just remember, firstly, Russian speakers don't expect you to have flawless skills in cases, verb endings, and so on. And if you can say at least something and understand something, you're already a superstar. Like right now, just by watching this video. My job as a teacher is to give you all the information and explain it. But if a topic is hard to digest, that's totally okay. Just take your time and don't worry. And secondly, to tell the truth, most native Russian speakers are actually pretty bad at their own grammar. Yeah, I don't mean the super simple things, but they still make such terrible grammatical and vocabulary mistakes that sometimes it's painful to hear. In fact, Russian language accent is considered one of the most difficult accents for Russian speakers themselves. And even I must confess, being a native speaker, a teacher, and a writer, feel unsure from time to time about whether I'm using the right noun ending or whatever, and I have to look it up in online dictionaries. That's why no panic. We are all in the same boat, more or less. And remember, if you are interested in Russian grammar,
You're already a superstar.
and now we can start researching the beast called noun or существительное in Russian. Just like in any other language, this part of speech represents the objects themselves. The two main questions for Russian nouns are what, что, and who, кто. That's our base. And just like in many European languages, Russian nouns have their own special features, and they are animacy, gender, number, and case. Actually, there are also proper and common nouns and a couple of other details, but that's not what we'll be dealing with because, in that regard, at least Russian and English nouns have nearly the same rules. So, we'll look at animacy, gender, number, and case, but in this video, it's just gonna be a brief introduction. For today, that's enough just to know what they are and why they matter. Just trust me. So, the first feature is animacy and inanimacy, or одушевленность, неодушевленность in Russian. And this is the only thing that we will learn directly in this video, because in my opinion, this feature is the easiest one and doesn't deserve an extra video. So, yeah, all nouns in Russian are either animate or inanimate. Animate nouns are people for sure, as well as animals, birds, insects, and all kinds of fish. Inanimate nouns are the rest of them and all the plants, yes. Sounds a bit philosophical, like, okay, dogs are considered animate in Russian, so what?
Hold on, guys.
Animacy and inanimacy have a huge grammatical meaning in Russian. Firstly, is the difference between what, что, and who, кто. Animate nouns are always who, кто. So, if you want to ask someone in Russian about their favorite animal, you literally ask not what is your favorite animal, but who is your favorite animal. Кто твое любимое животное? Or who is your favorite fish? So, all animals, birds, fish, and even insects are who, кто in Russian. The rest is what, что. Plants too. But here we also have exceptions, and they are objects that are technically not even alive, but grammatically they are considered more than alive. For example, kukla, a doll. This is also who, кто. Or призрак, a ghost. Also who, кто. And why is it so essential to know, you might ask me? Because secondly, knowing which noun is animate, who, and which is inanimate, what, will help you deal with one of the Russian cases. But we are not going to speak about it today, only when we deal with this specific case. And for today, you should only remember that all Russian nouns are animate: people, animals, birds, fish, insects, and some exceptions, or inanimate the rest of nouns, including plants. And animate ones are always who, кто, while inanimate ones are always what, что. The next Russian noun feature is gender, and yeah, it deserves extra attention, but later. For now, we're just gonna try to understand the concept itself. So, all things in Russian, animate or inanimate, it doesn't matter, literally have a gender, and there are three of them: masculine, мужской, feminine, женский, and neuter, средний. That means that all things are literally considered as he, он, she, она, or it, оно. Really, we use not only it, but also the pronouns he and she to describe and name things. Not only people, all things. For example, a table, стол, is he, он in Russian. This is a table, это стол. He is green, он зеленый. Not it is green in Russian, but he. Or a window, окно. It, оно. This is a window, это окно. It is wide, оно широкое. Here it's it just like in English because a window is neuter. Or a door, дверь. She, она. This is a door, это дверь. She is closed, она закрыта. Again, not it is closed in Russian, but she. You know what I mean, don't you? I hope so. And now you're also going to ask me, well, nice, but is it really that necessary to know gender? And I'm going to answer, totally necessary. The first reason we have already seen. In your speech, you have to change nouns to pronouns from time to time. We don't say, this is my table. The table is my favorite one. I bought the table last year, like table, 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 table. We say, this is my table. It is my favorite one. I bought it last year. The same goes for Russian. You have to change nouns to pronouns in your speech, but instead of using only it, you also have to use he or she according to the gender of the thing. For example, this table story in Russian would go this way. This is my table. He is my favorite one. I bought him last year. Not it or she, her, but he, him, because table, stol, is masculine in Russian. And the second reason is just as important. Without knowing the gender, you can't use adjectives and verbs with nouns correctly because their endings are based on the noun's gender. But don't panic, because I already feel the panic like, okay, then how we can know this freaking gender? Don't worry, we can, and it's really easy and not random at all. But that part, as well as a bit of practice, will be in another video. For today, we just remember that Russian nouns have three genders: masculine, мужской, feminine, женский, and neuter, средний, and we always need to keep this idea in mind. So, and now we're going to meet a feature that is definitely familiar to you, the category of number. Theoretically, everything is easy. Nouns in Russian have singular and plural forms, just like a table, tables. And also like in English, well, guys, I don't really know if English is a native tongue. For example, it's not my native tongue. And you might also speak German, French, Italian, Spanish, Chinese, Korean, Thai, whatever. But I always have to compare Russian to English because this is a language we all speak more or less. So, just like in English, some Russian nouns can only be singular. For example, вода, water, and some of them can only be plural. For example, деньги, money. We are going to speak separately about how to detect which ones are countable and which ones aren't countable, but it's not that hard. It was a quite similar logic to the English countable system, but with some interesting moments. So, as you can see, theoretically, there is nothing special. But When it comes to building a plural form, it's where we will meet some difficulties. First of all, yeah, plurals in Russian are also built by adding specific endings. But the problem is by adding specific endings, not just one ending. Like in English, in Russian, there are several of them. And secondly, for sure, we have exceptions. For example, cases where we change the whole word, not just the ending. But we will look at all these rules in details later. For now, just remember Russian nouns have singular and plural forms, and some can be either only singular or only plural. And now, guys, the final boss and probably the scariest grammar topic in Russian cases. But first, breathe in, breathe out. Don't worry, I won't sit here and start telling you all the names of the cases and meanings or the questions for each of them, blah blah blah. Not today. We will have separate videos about each case, so today we aren't going to overcomplicate things. We're just breathing. All I want to tell you today is what a case actually is, especially if there is no such thing in your native tongue, and if there is, you're lucky you can skip this part. And how many of them we have in Russian. That's all. Now, let me start with surprisingly the English language and, of course, English nouns. The thing is, nouns in English are pretty much unchangeable. For example, there is only one singular form of the word table and only one plural form, tables. That's it. And it's the same way with all nouns. That's why word order and prepositions are so incredibly important in English. It's the only way we can understand who is the subject, who is the object, to whom, by whom, where to, or where from. If you swap the words around in an English sentence, you can completely change the meaning sometimes in a very absurd way. For example, my mom bought a cake versus a cake bought my mom. In English, the second sentence sounds crazy because the words themselves don't change, so only the position tells us who did what. But in Russian, you're free to put a word in almost any position you like without changing the general meaning. And that's because we have cases, specific versions of every noun that show us how that word connects with the other ones in the sentence. For example, we have a case that shows that one thing belongs to another thing. To say the leg of the table, we don't use of in Russian. Instead, we change the word table itself to show possession. I don't mean the whole word, but its ending because we build the specific forms, cases, with the help of certain endings. So, as you can see, nouns in Russian were a bit like verbs. You know how in English you have a base form of the verb and you change its endings or forms according to the tense of the person making the action. Russian nouns do the exact same thing. They have a base form and we change the ending of this base to give the noun a specific meaning in the sentence. And if you ask me how many of these forms every noun has in total, I'll say well, there are six cases in Russian, just like six ways of changing of each noun. And that's all we need to remember for today. Just trust me, because you remember, don't you? All the years later. Well, here is our traditional summary table with all the concepts we spoke about today. The whole base in one single list, as always, just for you. Next time in our grammar section, we will speak about gender, and I promise it won't be that hard, especially with the base we have done today. But for today, that's all. And I hope this little lecture was useful or at least entertaining for you. See you next time here on the same channel with another video and with the teacher Anna. See you. До встречи!